The story begins in a small, humble town in Nigeria, where a boy named Jide was born. Jide grew up in a poor but loving household in the bustling city of Lagos. His father, a hardworking mechanic, and his mother, a seamstress, struggled to make ends meet but always emphasized the value of hard work, honesty, and faith. From an early age, Jide was taught to respect religion and the local church. However, as he grew older, he began to notice something that troubled him. At the center of his small community was Pastor Emeka, a charismatic preacher who seemed to have everything: wealth, followers, and an aura of power that people revered. Pastor Emeka would drive a brand new car, wear flashy suits, and always had the best things in life. This fascination with the life of his pastor stayed with Jide, but there was something darker underneath his admiration. Jide's curiosity would eventually grow into envy. He began to wonder, why couldn't he have the same wealth and influence as Pastor Emeka? What was the real secret behind the life of these men of God? As he entered adulthood, Jide found himself increasingly obsessed with the idea of success, particularly the kind of success that money could bring. He dreamed of leading a church like Pastor Emeka's, but unlike the pastor, Jide wasn't interested in saving souls. He wanted wealth, influence, and power. And so began his journey into the depths of manipulation, deception, and betrayal. Jide's fascination with the church had always been more about the power and wealth he saw in the lives of the pastors rather than the spiritual nourishment they promised their followers. He sat at the back of church services, observing the men of God with keen eyes. Their lavish lifestyles, the cars they drove, the homes they lived in, the expensive clothes they wore, it was all too much to ignore. He would often talk to his friends about it, joking that maybe he could start a church too and live like that someday. But deep inside, he knew that the only way to achieve that kind of success was not through genuine faith but through a more cunning and strategic route. He decided to study how the pastors became so influential. One afternoon, Jide found an old book in the corner of his father's dusty bookshelf titled The Psychology of Influence by Robert Cialdini. It was a book that changed the course of his life. It explained the power of persuasion, how people could be made to believe anything if the right emotional triggers were pulled. The book showed him how people were manipulated through social proof, authority, and reciprocity. Jide knew that this knowledge could be the key to his own rise to prominence. He began studying public speaking, learning to speak confidently, to move people emotionally, and to control their thoughts. He practiced daily, standing in front of his mirror, mimicking the gestures and words of renowned preachers, slowly perfecting his art of influence. Jide began by attending various churches across Lagos. He watched how the preachers would use prophecies, speak in tongues, and pray over people. He noticed how the crowd would react, how the fear of God, mixed with the promise of blessings, made people give everything they had. Jide knew this was his chance to test his new skills. He began to practice what he learned in small, secret gatherings of people from his neighborhood. He would prophesy to them, telling them about their hidden struggles and needs, information that he gathered by spying and talking to people around the community. It didn't take long for people to be impressed by his accuracy, and soon, they started following him. One Sunday, Jide decided to try a bigger experiment. He rented a small space and invited everyone from his neighborhood. He gave them a stirring sermon about the dangers of not tithing, convincing them that their financial struggles were linked to their lack of giving. His words were persuasive, his tone commanding, and by the end of the service, a good portion of the congregation had pledged to tithe. Jide knew he had found something powerful. It wasn't just about faith, it was about control. And with that, his journey toward building a fraudulent empire had begun. As Jide's influence grew, so did his ambition. He began to understand that he needed more than just his skills in public speaking. He needed followers who would believe in his every word, who would trust him implicitly. So, he started studying the art of building a loyal congregation. Jide rented a larger venue and put together a team of volunteers who helped him organize services. He hired musicians to play soft, calming worship music, and began employing highly trained ushers to ensure the congregation felt welcomed and protected. He gave his church a name, the True Light Church, a name that sounded righteous, but was designed to appeal to those who were seeking answers to life's difficulties. He didn't focus on helping people spiritually. Instead, he focused on making them feel good about themselves. Jide gave sermons about success, prosperity, and the power of tithing. He told his members that only through faith, and of course, giving, could they achieve true blessings. He subtly planted the idea that if they didn't tithe, they would face disaster, both in their finances and in their lives. Jide's sermons were captivating. He used fear to manipulate, guilt to control, and promises of wealth to bind his congregation to him. His church began to grow rapidly, and soon he had a sizable following of people who believed every word he spoke. Jide quickly realized that money was the lifeblood of his church. The more people gave, the more he could expand his influence. But he also knew that not everyone was eager to give, especially those who were struggling financially. He needed to push harder. He began to target his sermons at people's fears. He told them that they were cursed if they didn't tithe. He used biblical passages, twisted and distorted, to justify his claims. He also started offering special prayers for those who were struggling, but only if they made large contributions to the church. To ensure that people followed through, Jide deployed his spies, members of his church who were close to certain people and could gather private information about their lives. These spies would discreetly inform Jide of the personal problems of church members, which he would then use to craft specific prophecies. He would walk up to people during services, whisper their secrets to them, and tell them that the only way to solve their problems was to give more. The results were predictable. People who once doubted Jide's authority now felt compelled to tithe and contribute more, all in the name of avoiding disaster and securing blessings. Jide's success brought him not just wealth, but a sense of invincibility. He felt unstoppable. But there was a cost to his rise. The demands of maintaining his reputation and influence began to take a toll on his personal life. He needed to keep his congregation loyal, and that required more than just sermons and prophecies. Soon, Jide discovered that some of the women in his church were infatuated with him, drawn to his charismatic presence and powerful position. He started using this to his advantage, knowing that these women could be used to manipulate their husbands into giving more. When a prominent businessman named Chijioke began to question the legitimacy of Jide's teachings, Jide saw an opportunity. Chijioke's wife, Ngozi, was a member of the church, and she had confided in Jide about her marital struggles. Jide, ever the manipulator, took advantage of the situation and started an affair with Ngozi. He knew that once he had her in his grasp, her husband would fall in line. Sure enough, Chijioke soon became one of Jide's most loyal tithers. All thanks to the manipulation of his wife. This was just one example of how far Jide was willing to go for power and control. As Jide's church grew, so did his need for control. He began to structure his church around tithing. Those who gave generously were praised and given special positions of influence within the congregation. The tithe payers received preferential treatment, while those who failed to give were treated as outsiders. He made sure to publicly shame those who didn't tithe, often delivering scathing sermons about their lack of faith and spiritual poverty. People were terrified of being ostracized or called out, so they started giving even when they didn't have the means to. The rich members were encouraged to give larger sums, and Jide made sure to use their financial contributions to grow his ministry, expand his influence, and secure more followers. The cycle of manipulation continued, and Jide's wealth grew exponentially, but as the years passed, Jide found himself craving more. He wanted not just money, but the kind of power that could shape the entire nation. He began to realize that his influence over his congregation was limited. He needed to break through to the highest levels of society. To do that, he knew he would have to play a more dangerous game. Jide began to dabble in the occult, seeking out powerful figures who could help him gain access to the wealthiest and most influential people in the country. He consulted with local witch doctors and spiritualists, offering sacrifices and performing rituals to gain the supernatural power he believed he needed to break into the elite circles. The deeper he went into the dark arts, the more powerful and corrupt he became. He was willing to sacrifice anything for the power he desired, Even his own soul, Jide's obsession with power had now overtaken his original desire for wealth. The money, the cars, the expensive suits, all of that was beginning to feel insignificant. What he truly wanted now was absolute control. He wanted to manipulate not just his congregation, but the entire country. And to do that, he knew he needed to take a darker path. He had already begun to use the knowledge he gained from his psychology books, but now he was consulting with individuals who promised to open doors that only the truly powerful could walk through. One such figure was Baba Uche, a well-known local spiritualist who was rumored to have ties to the elite, the very kind of people Jide was desperate to meet. Baba Uche's reputation was built on a mysterious ability to grant power to those willing to make dark pacts. Jide made his first visit to Baba Uche's remote shrine, deep within the swamps of Lagos. The air was thick with the smell of incense, and the sky was dark, casting an eerie shadow over the grounds. Baba Uche welcomed Jide with an unsettling smile, sensing the ambition that burned in him. "You want power, don't you?" Baba Uche asked, his voice deep and measured. Jide nodded, the weight of his desire visible in his eyes. Baba Uche told him stories of men who had sought his help, who had risen to untold power through dark rituals. He spoke of the sacrifices they made, some of money, others of love, and a few, of life itself. But most importantly, he spoke of how these men had gained access to the inner circles of society, rubbing shoulders with politicians, businessmen, and the truly wealthy. "You must be willing to pay the price," Baba Uche warned. "The power you seek is not free. It will demand something in return, your soul, your innocence, your humanity." Jide, blinded by ambition, didn't hesitate. He agreed to the pact. Baba Uche performed a ritual, chanting in an ancient language Jide didn't understand, and with every word, Jide felt something inside him change. It wasn't just his mind that was being manipulated, it was his very soul. As the ritual ended, Baba Uche handed him a small, black stone, warning him that the power would not be kind. "Use it wisely, and the world will bow to you. But fail, and you'll find yourself surrounded by enemies you can never escape." Jide took the stone, feeling its weight in his palm. It was as though the weight of his entire future rested within it. The changes in Jide were immediate. He could feel an unshakable confidence coursing through his veins. Everything he did seemed to succeed effortlessly. His sermons became more captivating than ever. People were drawn to him, as if magnetized by an unseen force. Those who had once hesitated to give, now felt compelled to contribute large sums of money, driven by a strange sense of obligation they couldn't explain. But it wasn't just the money that flowed. Jide began to notice that his influence extended beyond his church. Politicians, businessmen, and celebrities started to attend his services, drawn by an unknown force. Jide's church, the True Light Church, became a symbol of status. It was no longer just about salvation, it was about being seen with Jide. And as his influence grew, so did his ability to manipulate the rich and powerful. One evening, at a lavish gathering of his most prominent members, Jide met Chika, a wealthy oil magnate known for his cold, calculating nature. Chika was immediately taken by Jide's charm and the raw power he exuded. Within a few minutes of conversation, Jide had planted the seed in Chika's mind. He had to invest in Jide's ministry, and in return, he would receive blessings that would double his wealth. Chika, unable to resist, made a significant donation to the church, promising further contributions. As he did, Jide felt the dark power intensify within him. The more money he received, the more powerful he became. Jide's power continued to grow as he slowly integrated himself into the circles of the rich and famous. His church services were attended by politicians and billionaires, all eager to bask in the glory of the True Light Church. Jide's sermons were no longer about salvation, they were about exclusivity. If you were rich, influential, or powerful, you had a special place in Jide's world. Jide's teachings became more extreme. He preached that wealth was the mark of God's favor, and those who didn't contribute to the church were not only cursed, they were doomed to eternal damnation. But it wasn't just about tithing. Jide introduced special sacrificial offerings, which required the rich to donate exorbitant amounts in exchange for spiritual protection from enemies and bad luck. No one dared to question him. In his personal life, Jide became more arrogant. He no longer felt the need to hide his manipulative tactics. When people asked him how he achieved such success, he would smile, pretending it was all part of divine providence, when in reality, it was his use of fear, manipulation, and dark arts. He also began to sleep with the wives of his most powerful members, using their intimate confessions as leverage. These women would return to their husbands, telling them that the only way to secure divine favor was through even larger contributions to Jide's church. And, just as he had done before, the husbands, afraid of losing everything, agreed without question. As Jide's wealth grew, so did his need for more power. The dark arts he had learned were no longer enough. He needed something more, a way to cement his control over those who would dare challenge him. He knew that the rich, no matter how loyal they appeared, were only as loyal as their self-interests. One wrong move, and they could destroy him. Jide decided to perform a final ritual, a blood sacrifice. It wasn't just a matter of securing his future, it was about making sure his influence would never waver, no matter the cost. His target was Chijioke, the businessman who had been one of his earliest converts. Chijioke had begun to question Jide's methods, asking uncomfortable questions about where all the money was going. Jide couldn't afford to let him continue. He needed to silence him, once and for all. One fateful night, Jide invited Chijioke to a special meeting at his church. The two sat in a private room, surrounded by the flickering lights of candles. Chijioke, unaware of Jide's dark intentions, smiled and accepted a drink from him. As they talked about the future of the church, Jide slipped something into Chijioke's drink, a powerful sedative. As Chijioke fell unconscious, Jide began the ritual. He didn't need to explain it to anyone. He knew the price for ultimate power, blood, and tonight Chijioke would pay it. By dawn, Chijioke was gone. His body was found in a nearby river, and rumors quickly spread about his mysterious death. But Jide's grip on his congregation tightened. He was untouchable now. The power he had longed for was finally his, but no power, no matter how great, comes without consequences. As Jide's wealth and influence grew, so did the jealousy and fear of those around him. Whispers began to spread, stories of how Jide had manipulated his followers, taken advantage of their faith, and used dark rituals to build his empire. One evening, during a lavish dinner with his elite circle, one of Jide's closest allies, Alyamide, confronted him. Alyamide had always admired Jide's rise but had begun to suspect something sinister about the way the church was being run. He knew about the secret meetings, the affairs, and the dark rituals. "You've gone too far, Jide," Alyamide said, his voice shaking with fear. "This isn't just about money anymore. You've become something else." Jide smiled, his eyes cold as ice. "You think I care about what you or anyone else thinks? I've built this empire, and I will destroy anyone who tries to take it from me." Alyamide's face paled. He knew then that Jide was no longer the man he had once called a friend. Jide wasn't just a fraud, he was a monster. As the days passed, Jide's grip on the church and his wealth tightened, but so did the looming storm of betrayals. The whispers that had begun in the shadows now grew louder. As more and more people began to question the true nature of Jide's rise to power. Among the murmurs, Alyamide's words lingered in Jide's mind, gnawing at him. He couldn't let anyone threaten his empire, not now, not when he was so close to having it all. One night, as he sat in his lavish office, surrounded by his collection of rare artifacts and expensive artwork, Jide received an unexpected visitor. Baba Uche, the spiritualist who had helped him rise to power, appeared at the door, his presence as commanding as ever. Jide stood up, startled but composed. He had not seen Baba Uche since the ritual that had sealed his fate. His mind flashed back to the price he had paid, the blood of Chijioke. The sacrifices that had gotten him to this point. And now, it seemed, Baba Uche had come to collect. "You've become quite powerful, Jide," Baba Uche said, his voice smooth and ancient. But you are not invincible. Power comes with its own enemies. Jide smiled, his confidence unshaken. I've eliminated the weak. Anyone who stands against me will fall. I'm in control now. Baba Uche studied him carefully, his piercing eyes never leaving Jide's face. You think you're in control, but you are merely a pawn. The forces you have awakened are beyond your comprehension. There's a price for everything. And sometimes, the price is more than your soul. Jide laughed. I've already paid the price. I've sacrificed money, time, loyalty, even blood. I've done everything to gain what I deserve. Baba Uche's expression softened into a grim smile. But have you truly gained what you deserve? Or are you merely a puppet to forces you cannot understand? I came to warn you, Jide. There are those more powerful than you, and they are watching you. You may be the king of your church, but there are others who control the real power in this world. Jide felt a chill run through him. He had always believed he was above everyone else, but now doubt began to creep in. What are you saying? He asked, his voice suddenly unsteady.